Welcome back to the forecast. And I talked a little bit before we all went into our meetings about how this whole thing is going to come down. We did the networking. We're going to come back and in just a few minutes here, we're going to have our presentations. We do always open with a little community roundtable, but probably 4 or 5 of the people that we usually talk to are actually presenting today. So that'll shorten community roundtable, but we do have 2 or 3 we'll do. In the meantime, you all know this because many of you put on events, et cetera, that these things just don't work if you don't have sponsors. And we've been very fortunate to have some of the same sponsors with us for literally 11 years. And it's just been unbelievable support. People like Dean Transportation, like Bob and Leap, Lansing Economic Area Partnership, Sinair, who has been with us a long time as well, Shaheen Chevrolet, and now Cadillac, MSU International Business Center, Broad College of Business, Kettering University, who's a new sponsor, PNC Bank, who has been with us many years, Fly Lansing, of course, and you'll hear about the airport, and WLNS TV6 has been our media sponsor for a lot of years as well. And I think they can't shake off the affiliation they had with me many years ago. It's kind of like one of those little infections you can't get rid of, you know, that sort of thing. Anyway, as a tradition for the speaker series, we go around the room to some of the community leaders, as I said, for some updates. And as most of those community leaders are going to be up here presenting, we're going to present only 3 people, 2 of whom are live, 1 pre-recorded. And so let's start with the pre-recorded one. Our good friend Jason Quartz, General Manager at Shaheen Chevrolet and Cadillac. So Jason, with that, would you take it away?
Thanks, Chris, for having me on today. And I can tell you, auto sales has been good, and GM's been very aggressive. And for instance, this month, they did come out with GM employee pricing. So everybody pays what we pay. And that's when they come out with that, it does move the whole market. And I'll tell you right now, we can feel it with the phones ringing, our emails. It's just people are coming out of the woodwork here. Now, a lot of our business is GM employee pricing anyhow. About 50% of our business is. So now that other 50% gets what they get. And so we have been getting inventory. So that's a good thing. We're not to where we were last year. We're off, as far as in-stock inventory, we're off a couple hundred units. And Chevrolet, we're about the same in Cadillac. Cadillac has been coming in a little bit quicker. But we have Cadillac on our campus, so everything's a little bit easier to manage. And we're even adding a whole nother parking lot for our Cadillac. Now that the facility's built and we realize what we actually had, we added on a couple more acres, kind of on the southeast side, and that should be all blacktopped here within the next couple days. So,
well, as we in a few minutes present the COVID survey, Michigan Future Business Index, you guys fall in the category of unaffected for the most part. I appreciate that. Excellent stuff. All right. Thanks, Jason Quartz from Shaheen Chevrolet and Cadillac, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Next up then, of course, we're going to go to Rob Benstein. Rob is the acting director of the Capital Region International Airport, and such a very important part of our infrastructure here. Rob, how are things going out there?
Good morning, Chris. As everyone knows, the airline industry has been severely impacted by the COVID pandemic. For example, in April, airline passenger traffic dropped 96% compared to the same month the prior year, which is just unbelievable numbers. The industry's experienced a slow but steady recovery through the summer. However, month over month increases have leveled off since then. So we've seen a little bit of a dip. Didn't see the usual bump in passengers we normally would over the Thanksgiving holiday. So things have leveled off a little bit. I've got some data from the International Air Transport Association. That's a trade group for the airlines throughout the world. This is specifically for the North America market. In 2020 versus 2019, demand dropped 66%. So basically, you've got 34% of the people flying compared to last year. Capacity, or the number of seats available, dropped 51.6%. Happy to report that Lansing, Capital Region International Airport, is doing a little better than the national average. Demand has dropped 61.3%, and capacity dropped about 45%. So a little better than the average, but still down considerably compared to last year. Looking ahead, 2021 versus 2020, they expect an increase of 60% in terms of demand, which is good news. But when you compare that to 2019, it's still down 45%. So they figure by the end of next year, we'd be at about 55% of 2019 levels. So it's going to be a fairly long recovery, probably 4 years before we get back to what we're used to seeing. On the capacity side, they expect an increase in 21 of 36%, but compared to 19, we'd still be down just over a third at 34%. With respect to Lansing, our 3 airlines, Delta, American, and United, were maintaining daily service to Detroit and Chicago. Unfortunately, our service to Washington, D.C. and Minneapolis is temporarily suspended. I would expect to see that come back once business travel resumes. I think business travel right now is probably about 15% of what it normally is. And those are business markets. So, the airlines are really managing their capacity carefully. And, we hope to see those come back once the business travel starts up. Happy to report that Apple Vacations will resume their seasonal charter service to Cancun, Mexico on February 13th.
All right, there you go. Well, that's worth looking forward to anyway. Well, I tell you what, you guys are doing a stellar job staying above the national average. And we talked a little bit offline. One of the remarks I made is that I can't think of a place that would be safer than an airplane right now from the standpoint of COVID-19, because they've gone to such extensives to make sure that they are safe. So as soon as we get that trust factor back up, hopefully you'll start running out of parking lots.
That would be a good thing. And speaking of parking lots, we started our parking operations again Monday. So I think a lot of people know that we open the gates and let people in and out. But with the recovery coming back slowly, we resumed our parking operations. So
gotcha.
A word to the wise: if they're coming out to the airport, you're going to have to pay to get out again.
There you go. All right. Well, that's what we want. Rob, thanks so much. And thanks for the good work you do out there.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Chris.
All right. I didn't see Marcy Daniels, the new Vice President and General Manager at WLNS 6. Did Marcy make it? No. Okay. No. All right. So we won't have an update there. Let's move on then. And I will once again very quickly remind you that if you lose your connection, going through the same original link that you had, 893-9877-0877, and then the passcode is 717066. So our first presentation today, hot off the press, the results from the Michigan Future Business Index. This is an important one. Usually it's presented by one of the AF Group's executives that sponsor the survey, but this year it's going to be presented by the gentleman who actually conducts the survey in the field, Paul King at ROI Insight, and has been doing it a number of years. So with that, let's turn it over to Paul King.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul King. I'm the founder and president of ROI Insight. Today, I'll be presenting the latest results from the Michigan Future Business Index, the fourth quarter of 2020. As you may remember, we retooled the survey back in May to address the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on small business here in the state of Michigan. The latest results show that there is reason for hope and optimism as small business owners may be seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. The results here do show some improvement since May. We surveyed 600 small to medium-sized businesses here in the state of Michigan. The Michigan Future Business Index is produced by the Michigan Business Network and underwritten by the Accident Fund Insurance Company of America. We are very thankful for the Accident Fund for underwriting this important survey, and the data that comes from it helps us keep our finger on the pulse of small business here in the state of Michigan. And the Michigan Business Network does a great job of producing this, has been for many years. Myself at ROI Insight, Paul King, have been involved with the Michigan Future Business Index now. It'll be 10 years next year, so I am proud to be doing this work for both Michigan Business Network and the Accident Fund. The credibility interval on this survey is plus or minus 4.7% or less on the total sample. Today I will provide just a brief overview of the data and pull out some of the highlights. But if you would like to look at more of this survey, please feel free to visit the Michigan Business Network's website at michiganbusinessnetwork.com to download the rest of the survey. Let's start with satisfaction of the economy. Let's look at 1 year ago today. Satisfaction was at 82%, a near record level. Back in May, when we were in the height of these stay home, stay safe order, that number dropped from 82 to 11% satisfied with the economy. 73% said dissatisfied. The number has now improved a bit. The satisfaction level has gone up since May to 28% now, and 55% saying total dissatisfied. Obviously not a great result, but it is moving in the right direction. Hopefully we get back to that 82 number where we were before. We also asked folks about their business performance before and during the pandemic. 81% said that their business performance was pretty good or excellent just before the pandemic. Then back in May, it plummeted to 8%, saying that their business was in pretty good or excellent shape. 77% said it was in not so good or poor shape. The numbers have improved slightly since May. 27% say they are now in pretty good or excellent shape, and 50% say they are in not so good or poor shape. 94% of the folks reporting say that they are open now. That is up from 65% reporting that in May. The industries getting hit hardest are the restaurant and food service industry, where 67% said that they are in bad shape, and nonprofit and healthcare, saying 61% saying that they are in bad shape. In this next question, we asked folks about their expectations for getting back to normal after COVID. As you can see, there is reason for hope here, as optimism is increasing. In May, 39% said that they were optimistic about getting back to normal. Now in November, 52%, a clear majority, are optimistic about getting back to normal after COVID. Those who are pessimistic, that group has shrunk from 44% in May to 31% now. Reasons for optimism are their loyal customers and pent-up demand, also potential opportunities for growth, and their great staff that they say has been staying busy and positive. Reasons for pessimism is the loss of customers, actually, and their concern for government overreach and overregulation. Those in the insurance and finance industry are most optimistic, with 60% saying they are. Also, healthcare and nonprofit are also not optimistic here, most optimistic at 63%. And those in food service and manufacturing are least optimistic. The key takeaways regarding hiring and wages, nearly 2/3 now say that they have not laid off any employees, and more than 8 in 10 say they have not cut wages. They cite their ability to allow more people to work from home or work remotely as a positive thing, and being able to keep their staff on board. And they also believe that working remotely will continue to be part of the new normal going forward, as it has met or exceeded their expectations with regard to being productive at work. More than 8 in 10 now say that they have kept their benefits the same. They have not reduced benefits. Those, again, areas that are reporting the most layoffs are in the restaurant and food sectors. And also business services and retail have recorded the most decreases in wages and benefits. key takeaways regarding sales, profits, cash flow, and customer retention, all of which are still in the negative category, but they are improving, especially since May, where we hit rock bottom. 70% of those reporting said that sales have decreased, which is that number of those reporting decreases has shrunk from 86% in May. 64% now say profits have decreased, down from 84% in May. 63% have said cash flow has decreased, which is down from 83% in May. And 42% now say customer retention has decreased, which is down from 47%. And now a plurality say customer retention has stayed the same, all moving in the right direction as well. And again, food service seems to be getting hit the hardest here. Most in the food service industry, 83% reporting sales decreases. Also, 63% in the food service sector record customer retention decreases. How are they surviving during the pandemic, and how are they preparing to thrive after? Nearly 90% have applied for some sort of financial assistance during the pandemic. That's up from 79% in May. Nearly all have been approved, and a majority, nearly 6 in 10, are happy with the loan process. More than 7 in 10 say they're either very well, or somewhat well prepared for post-COVID business world. And nearly 2/3 say they are enthusiastic about remaining in business after it's over. This was an important highlight here. Nearly 2/3 expect to fully recover sometime next year. However, there are just over a quarter who say their recovery will not happen until 2022, and 17% are uncertain they'll ever recover. Another positive movement here in the survey, we asked people if they believe their business will emerge weaker or stronger from COVID-19. Back in May, 21% said that they would emerge stronger. That has gone up to 37% now. 59% said they would emerge weaker back in May. That has shrunk to 42% here in November. Healthcare and nonprofit business sectors have the highest percentage believing they'll emerge stronger at 41%, while those in the food service, again, industry, restaurants, are most likely to believe that they'll emerge weaker. 46% said weaker there. And then finally, who do they point to with regard to providing most of the challenge here for recovery? They tend to blame government response for making recovery more challenging. 7 in 10 believe that small business voices are largely not being heard by lawmakers, which is up from 63% in May. And nearly 6 in 10 say the state's response to COVID-19 has been too strong, while 43% say it has been either about right or not strong enough. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I thank you so much for listening, and I thank all of you who participated in this survey. It is important that we do hear the voices of small business so we can pass it on to those stakeholders in the state of Michigan who are making decisions that affect all of small business. Thanks again.
Well, that's exactly right. And thank you, Paul. We appreciate the work that you do on this and your understanding of what's going on. He's also going to be selecting the winners, and we're going to be posting them on the website and sharing them in the newsletter, contacting them directly and getting them their prizes. These are the drawings that we do for everybody who fills out the survey to ensure that we get good participation. So thank you, as Paul said, to all who participated in this MFBI survey. It's become a very valuable instrument. Now, if you want to ask questions during this, please post your questions during the discussion in the chat room or, of course, on Zoom, or email Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at michiganbusinessnetwork.com. We're going to then get those questions answered, sent back to you with the answers. And in addition, we're going to share the questions and the answers with the entire audience who has has been here today so that you can get the benefit of the question and the answer. So we'll be posting those on our website at a later time. Next up, our good friend, Jade Sims, trade specialist at Michigan State University, International Business Center. Jade, how is Michigan doing when it looks at the international markets? Jade?
All right, good morning. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. We'll see where we sit here in mid-Michigan and how we interact, where our space is vis-a-vis what's happening in the rest of the US and what's happening in the rest of the world. So I'd like to start by talking about the importance of trade to the Michigan economy. We sometimes don't realize how global we are, but we're actually the second most dependent on international trade of any state in the union. The only one that beats us is Kentucky. And a lot of that is due to the aerospace, which we can foresee based off of a little bit of what we heard already in the Lansing airport this morning, that may be decreasing. So it's really our really deep automotive roots that are giving us such high numbers. Even at 36.5% right now of our economy, that's fallen in the last 2 years. The previous year, 2018, was almost 39%. And, we talk a lot about what's happening with the tariffs and how that's affecting us. And now, as we just heard from Paul, the whole COVID and pandemic situation have also dampened our international involvement. And of Michigan, but of the entire United States, right, and many of the other countries in the world. So we still sit pretty high as a big exporter, even bigger importer here in the state of Michigan. And having said that, we still have a pretty significant trade deficit going on. And a lot of that has to do with, a lot of the back and forth, which I will discuss. So our exports to the world in 2019 were sitting at about, I'm getting ahead of myself, about 55 billion. And now our imports were sitting last year at 142 billion. We see that decrease that I just mentioned. So then the question is, okay, who are we involved with? About 41% of our exports go to Canada, and about 20% of our exports go to Mexico. We talk about the importance of China, and clearly China is a very important country to all of us in our day-to-day lives, even though we don't realize it, but not nearly what our two closest neighbors are. Importing is somewhat of a similar story, but it flips. We're actually importing about 42% of what comes into Michigan from Mexico. And about a third of what we import is coming in from Canada. And China, again, still sits quite significantly below those. So what are we selling to the world? In case we didn't realize it, Michigan is selling that transportation equipment. 9 of the top 10 categories are all automotive related categories when we look at what we're sending out into the world. And similarly, most of what we're importing is also automotive related. So if that sounds a little bit contradictory, remember that of automotive components, an average component might cross the border between Michigan and Canada about 7 times before it ends up in one of these vehicles that are produced locally here in Lansing. Another big sector of our economy, not so much from a number standpoint, but or financial standpoint, but definitely from an employment standpoint, is agriculture. And so, just last week I was over at Costco and I saw this jar of Michigan cherry preserves and I thought, oh, how fascinating. I love cherries. I love Michigan. I picked up the jar and I spun it around, and right there on the back of the Michigan cherries, it says product of Canada. And so we grow these cherries here, we send them across to Canada for processing, and then we bring them back and sell them back in Michigan. which really speaks to that international trade, but also to one of our opportunities here in Michigan is to really bring more food processing into the state. A lot of that major value add is in the processing, and it's happening in Canada. And a couple of years ago, I picked up a similar jar to this, and it actually said Ohio. So I don't know if it's better that it's being produced in or processed in Ohio or in Canada, but it should be processed here in Michigan, right? When we look by metro area across the state, clearly, as expected, Detroit, Wayne County, Oakland really takes the lion's share of that production for export. But Lansing isn't doing too bad. In 2017, we were the 7th largest metro area in Michigan for exports. And we were at about 1.1 billion. And we've actually increased. Now we're ahead of Saginaw and ahead of South Bend. And I believe that Bob is going to speak a little bit to some of the reasons for that when we talk about FDI shortly. So why does all of this matter, right? So I'm really an international trade export evangelist, and this is why I do this. The Department of Commerce, the SBA, the MEDC, we all get really excited about trying to promote and create Michigan exports. And the reason that is that exporting companies tends to pay more to their employees. Exporting companies are more resilient, they're more diversified, they're more innovative. And they do better in these tumultuous times that we're experiencing, right? We're trying to fix a trade balance, and exporting creates jobs here in the state. In 2018, we had for the first time, we finally hit this milestone, over 15,000 companies in Michigan exporting. And the vast majority, 89% of those are small and medium-sized businesses. And a lot of those are the ones that we work with and try to assist to achieve those goals. And that translated in 2016 to over 270,000 jobs here in the state. Another really important component of international trade that's great for us is foreign direct investment. And again, that brings in really competitive jobs into the state, some wonderful research and development activities. And those companies are also the ones that tend to export their products back into their parent countries and other countries around the globe as well. So we've got about 1,400 foreign companies here in the state with locations in about 5,000 places around Michigan. And you may have seen recently that Michigan ranked 3rd out of 50 states in foreign direct investment, which is a real boon for us, really exciting. And a lot of that we have LEAP to thank for. So thanks, Bob, and your team. Where is this coming from? That foreign direct investment comes from all over the globe, and you see some of those countries highlighted there. The 2 countries with the largest projects recently that we're not seeing here are FCA. It pains us in Michigan to realize FCA is not a Michigan company. It's actually based in Amsterdam. And Mahindra, which is an Indian company, but both of those involved in the automotive space as well. So looking ahead, these tariffs have definitely impacted and lowered international trade, as those numbers have shown. We, as Michiganders, are paying more for even Lansing-built automobiles from a tariff standpoint, if we look at what we're paying for those tariffs. And the loss of our sales into international markets due to those retaliatory tariffs that are out there. So the question is, how is this new administration going to deal with that? What are the Biden administration's multilateral efforts going to look like? The belief is that he's bringing us back into this multilateral space to kind of provide a counterbalance and check against China. So we'll see what happens with that. And I can't finish today without talking about COVID, right? And how it's impacted us and what that looks like. So clearly, the numbers I looked at were mostly manufactured goods and physical goods. But services are a huge component of what we do here in Michigan as well, right? So our tourism economy has definitely been affected, and I'm sure we'll hear about that in a moment, and education, right? So all of these international students that are at Michigan State University, at University of Michigan, and others around the state, that's a service export for us. And we have, definitely been affected by this COVID. And what is that going to look like moving forward? What I recently have been reading is that we're looking toward a significant, but not a full recovery in 2 years. So that's a little bit more optimistic than what we heard from the airport this morning, but I think pretty much in line with what Paul just mentioned. And then for our college graduates, there is some optimism as well in that the prospects for our graduates this spring in 2021 do look a little bit better than they did last year. So hopefully things are turning around for us, and look forward to a prosperous 2021 and look forward to hearing what the other presenters have to say this morning. So thank you for your time, and thanks for the opportunity, Chris.
Well, Jade, it's always great to have you on. And with all the fake news out and, all the misinformation, it's great to look at statistics and say, okay, this truly was the effect of the tariff war, et cetera. So there it is right in front of you. Jade, thanks for bringing this. We appreciate it. So I love the mission of the next organization. Having been a past chair, I think back when Bronco Nagurski was playing football, if I'm not mistaken, I chaired the Convention Visitors Bureau, and I love the organization that brings visitors in. They drop money. They have a great experience. They go away and they come back and do the same thing. This is just added cash to our area, and it takes a lot to sell that, and this young lady does that really well. Julie Pingston, President and CEO of the Greater Lansing Convention Visitors Bureau. Julie?
Good morning, Chris, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm very glad that a few previous speakers have set the tone for what I have to convey today about the tourism industry and where we sit today. So if you can turn the next slide, please. Our mission and vision for our organization is really clear-cut, like Chris said, that we are here to promote this region as a visitor destination to impact the area's economy. And so we represent meeting facilities, hotels, sport venues, restaurants, attractions, places to see and things to do, as well as the airport and other transportation opportunities throughout the community. So obviously our mission and vision right now is a little bit in disarray, but we are fighting hard to keep tourism strong. So next slide, please. I'll start with 2019. These are some of our normal statistics where in a typical year, we will host 5.3 million visitors to the community, affecting 11,000 jobs and bringing in about $682 million in economic impact. One of our key metrics is the occupancy rate of our hotel community. And in 2019, we ended at 61.6%. So now that's kind of where the good news stops, and we'll jump to 2020. And next slide, please. All you have to know about this slide is that that really large red line is leisure and hospitality. So that is the largest affected industry related to the COVID-19 and everything that it has represented in the stoppage of our industry. So according to one of our national associations, U.S. Travel Association, along with Tourism Economics, 40% of direct travel jobs have been lost already. And if federal help is not secured by the end of the year, it will probably be 50% by the end of the year. So unemployment in the tourism and hospitality sector is nearly double the national average. So if you can turn to the next slide. The challenges are pretty obvious, but we like to remind people that there have been no large gatherings. There have been no sport tournaments. Actually, many of our sport tournaments that were going to be held this summer were able to be held in surrounding states like Ohio and Indiana. They just had more capacity with their regulations for meetings and gatherings. So we lost a lot of business to our neighbors, and we'd like some Christmas cards and holiday cheer from them for that gift that they got from Michigan and from our region. So the Lansing Center has only hosted since March 11th, probably 5 events. And our largest event for the entire COVID pandemic timeframe has been anything happening at the Capitol related to some protests. So those are not the kind of numbers we want to share. So if you can turn the next slide. This is our lodging occupancy percentage. As you can see, April was pretty devastating for the industry. That 22.1% is a month average. We actually hit 1 week in April that dropped to 18% occupancy. And it really does take at least 50% occupancy for our hotel community to make a profit. And so as you can see right now, we're sitting at 45.7%. For November, we're already tracking down like we do normally in November and December, but at the same percentage. So while we feel that we've, come forward since April, obviously we're very much staying steady and hoping that then moves forward into probably past March into April and May. The next slide, please. This is the rate that the hotels do charge, the average daily rate. So as you can see, we also took a big hit on what the hotels are receiving in revenue. The rate for an average stay went down to $69 in April. And that is probably the more concerning thing, that rate has not moved a whole lot since that time frame. We've gotten up to 77, but it's definitely not moving as fast as the occupancy rate. So that is where I'm going to stop talking about, all the down, and go to the next slide, where I have been so energized and impressed with our industry. They have been so creative, so nimble. I think many of you have seen some of the results of when you've eaten at outdoor patios, when you've been able to do a tailgate takeout and have tailgate food at your home. Our hotels have offered day rates so that you could get away from your home and be working maybe when your kids aren't working or you don't have internet capacity. And so they've offered a day rate for working in a hotel. Our retailers have done great promotions with window shopping, Facebook Live shopping, everything to really just keep getting people to shop local, eat local, enjoy local, spend local, and play local. This is an ad that we've put out, and we're just can't get this message across strong enough over the January, February, March timeframe that this is going to be the key for bringing this industry around, or actually saving it. We'll be fearful of what is left to promote on the other side of the winter months. So next slide, please. So we have been working very hard on our end as well with the Safe Pledge. This is something that a lot of visitors have really gravitated to on our website, and many businesses have been a part of this, taking the pledge, over 150 so far. And we've partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to be a part of Relaunch Lansing. I'm sure Tim will talk more about that, but the Safe Pledge has really been something that shows that our community is working together for visitors to come back here and be a strong part of our community and bring those dollars back to our community. So next slide, please. Going forward, we're really looking forward to there's still new product coming into our community. We have 3 hotels in development. The Courtyard by Marriott at the 600 block project on Michigan Avenue in downtown Lansing is going to open probably in February or March. So we're looking forward to that hotel serving the downtown community and the Lansing Center going forward. The Graduate Hotel is on the entryway into East Lansing, the gateway right there, and they'll be opening at least tentatively right now in the late second quarter. And then the Red Cedar development has those 2 hotels going in probably later in 2022. They're under construction right now. So we are looking forward to new product and having more things that are coming into the community. And even though we have had a lot of down and gloom and doom, there are still new things happening. We've had a number of new restaurants open. Right next to us is coming the slider bar, sidecar slider bar right here in the Stadium District. The Jolly Pumpkin opened in East Lansing. The City Market project with the Lansing Shuffleboard and Social Club. Those are all things that are really going to bring this visitor economy back, as well as our local residents to experience those wonderful things. So next slide, please. I think we've all been talking about how the forecast is for the future. This matches what was mentioned by the airport, that this full recovery is a lot slower. We will start to recover in 2021, but it's going to be predicted right now by Tourism Economics organization that it'll be 2024 where we return to 2019 levels. So it's going to be a long journey for us. But next slide. But we are tourism strong, and we work hard every day to be nimble, to really keep the promotions going. Our calendar for 2022 is extremely strong and aggressive. We're hosting a number of national events, including the National Horseshoe Pitchers Association, USA Judo, NCAA Golf, a number of returning conventions that rotate here. And so we are looking forward to a strong 2022. We just are working Tourism Strong to get through 2021. So happy to answer questions on the chat, and thank you for the opportunity to share tourism story in the community and be able to hopefully go forward all together and get out of this whole downward slide. Thanks.
Well, I'll tell you what, Julie, thanks for that report. I remember reading a book called Trial by Fire, and it was about the Abraham Lincoln administration and the fact that almost every day he spent in office, the country was at war with itself. And I think Julie stepped into office and right away the bottom fell out. And you are doing a tremendous job of dealing with that. And I appreciate it. We're all, of course, crossing our fingers and hoping that the new vaccine will expedite this recovery situation. But Julie, thanks for the update. We appreciate it. All right, with that, another extremely viable organization who do so much in the business community and have for so many years. Our good friend, Tim Daman, President and CEO of the Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce. Tim, what's happening with you guys?
Hey, good morning, Chris, and thank you for inviting us to be part of today's program again. We certainly appreciate all that you and your organization does in supporting small businesses, not only here in our region, but across the state. And I think, as we look at, and I know a number of the folks on the call this morning as well, I want to thank you too, a number of investors into our organization for hanging in there with us this year and supporting us and reaching out to us and participating in a lot of the virtual platforms that we've established as well. And I know I have a couple of my team members on the call this morning too, and they've been just nothing short of amazing this year. So, when we look at 2020, and if we were to sum it up, you can go to next slide, please. Our team had a little bit of fun with this. It's from the Friends TV show, The Pivot, and if you remember, Ross was trying to move this oversized couch into a narrow hallway. And so, I think we've tried to find some opportunities to have fun, and this is one that we have with the whole pivot. And I think the one thing is for certain, I can tell you that all of us who presented here last year at this program, I can tell you that we did not forecast that we would be doing this program virtually in December of 2020. So next slide, please. We very quietly this year in our region, infrastructure remains one of the business community's top priorities here. In 2020, we had over $200 million, almost close to $300 million in infrastructure investment. That includes roads as well as above ground, in ground, investment as well. It was really anchored by the I-496 rebuild, which is the picture on the right-hand side of the screen there, and the west side of our region. That included a complete rebuild of 496 from Lansing Road to I-96. It was bridge repair. It was entrance and exit ramp repair as well. And really one of our, most congested areas on a daily commute is along this 496 stretch. In October of this year, we opened the Coleman Road extension. This was a $7 million extension from underneath 127, connecting West Road to Wood Road and that northern tier of East Lansing, and really kind of that financial services sector up there. It was actually a road that I talked about here at this program 3 years ago that we had began making some progress. We were very pleased to see that road completed as well. We look ahead to 2021 and beyond. The 127 496 rebuild is still on schedule, supporting a lot of the growth that's along that corridor, as well as the I-96, that NAFTA corridor that would get us through Clinton County and through Eaton County. For those of us that are traveling north and south on that, leaving Lansing and heading to 94, that's a horrible stretch of I-69 there is scheduled to be replaced and repaired, as well as that northern part up there going through Clinton County and DeWitt. Next slide, please. You know, Julie referenced the relaunch Greater Lansing. It's one of the things I think we're most proud of this year was, you know, we were able to pull together a number of our partners, including the CVB, including Bob and LEAP, and then Carrie and the Capital Area Michigan Works, and as well as a number of business leaders, healthcare providers, and community education leaders as well. And Relaunch Greater Lansing is, we built out a number of resources for employers as they continue to navigate this COVID-19 economy this year. And so how do they bring employees back safe? How are they keeping their customers safe? How are we keeping visitors safe? I mean, all of the resources that you want, we've consolidated and put into this Relaunch Greater Lansing. I would encourage you, if you haven't checked it out yet, go to the relaunchgreaterlansing.com website, take a look on there. There's anything and everything you're going to need to know, from executive orders to the latest data, and to, again, to how you safely, you know, relaunch, re-engage, and reopen your business. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, we launched a partnership with the Ingham County Health Department as well. It's a business hotline for businesses that are trying to handle and navigate for employees that have been diagnosed. And so the partnerships we've had here in this community have been second to none. And I've been so impressed and so pleased to just be part of that and watch this community come together and helping our businesses navigate some of these challenging times. Julie mentioned that Safe Pledge campaign, and that is been a huge part of what we've done here as well. And would encourage you, if you haven't taken that yet, check out the CVB website or the Relaunch website, and you too can sign up for that Safe Pledge campaign. Next slide, please. You know, our regions continue to see growth throughout 2020. I mean, when you look at this map here, it really, you know, focuses on two corridor areas. We talked a lot about the Michigan Avenue corridor, and then you got the 127 corridor, over $1 billion in development from Mason to St. John's. And I know Bob will probably talk a lot more about that. These were almost to it. Every one of these projects here is something I think that Bob and his team have been a part of. And when you look at Delta Township alone, the new Delta crossings, the $200 million Delta crossings, along with auto owners and the BWL Energy facility, is close to $1 billion just in Delta Township alone. So continuing to see a significant amount of growth. And again, in that red line there, right in the middle of it, is connecting as Michigan Avenue, and it's connecting state government, healthcare, and higher ed, and connecting Lansing to East Lansing. And certainly the opening of the Block 600, the Capital City Market, and the new hotel there has been a significant anchor as well for that. Next slide, please. Just last week, we recognized, I think it was our 15th annual celebration of regional growth program. And over those 15 years, we recognized, I believe now it's 74 businesses, and they've invested, I think it's close to like maybe $2.5 to $3 billion that has been invested in our region over the last 15 years. This year, we recognize the Michigan State Capitol Commission for the Heritage Hall, the Welcome Center, another project that we've talked a lot about. The state capitol, one of our top tourist destinations in our region. We're certainly pleased to see that that Welcome Center and Visitor Center moving forward now. Gillespie Group for the Block 600 project. Sparrow for just keeping our region and our people safe. I think for their testing, the innovation that they've taken on through that testing process for COVID, as well as continued economic investment along that all-important Michigan Avenue corridor. And then we recognize the Coleman Road project. And, you know, we talk so much about, partisan politics, and this was a great example of what collaboration and where it can get us from. We had so many partners on this, and we were able to recognize the City of East Lansing, Ingham County Board of Commissioners, the Clinton County Board of Commissioners, and DeWitt Charter Township for the collaborative approach in securing the funding for the Coleman Road extension. Next slide, please. Small business support, you heard Julie talk a lot about that, and we have seen so much innovation. We've seen so much resiliency, so much creativity, and this is the plug this morning for us to continue to do what we can to support our small business community, whether it's shopping online, whether it's the gift cards, whether it's the order out and takeout, social media, leaving reviews, all of the above. And I think a recent study by Visa indicated that 60% of consumers plan on doing the majority of their holiday shopping this year with local retailers. And when we kind of talk about what else we can do here, I like to throw out this challenge. I think I do it every year here, but for all of us, as we lead up to the holidays here in the next couple of weeks, again, pick a handful of your local businesses and go spend $50 with them, whether it's again on gift cards or other purchases. And then this fact as well, and just shifting 10%, not new 10%, but just shifting 10% of your spending to local businesses has been shown that it could increase to a regional economy $200 to $300 million into a regional economy. So again, I think for all of us, what we continue to do to support our local small businesses. Next slide, please. Some of the surveys we've done, I think we've done close to 10 surveys with our businesses throughout this this process. If you see the 4 there on the left-hand side of the screen, really all relate to jobs and economy. And I think that's something we've heard continuously since March, is really about the economic recovery, and with it, whether it's talent and workforce development, whether it's the infrastructure, economic development, all kind of feeding back into the jobs economy. Healthcare continues to be, I think, a little bit of a concern growing there. And then, the 36% over there with the government regulations, I think a lot of that can be attributed to, probably the handling of COVID, and whether you agree or disagree with that and some of the shutdowns that have occurred. Next slide, please. Again, business needs talent, and that workforce development continues to, to be a top one up there. The other two we look at is a year ago, these two were not on our radar, and obviously the coronavirus health and safety for our businesses is where they are today and going into 2021. And then 29%, kind of looking at, how they navigate these government shutdowns and other regulatory involvement there. So next slide, please. COVID impact, you almost spot on to what you've heard from Paul and Julie and Jade with where that is. And, as of right now, 12% of our members and businesses here in this region have told us there's been very little to no impact from COVID, and they anticipate going into 21 very strongly. Over 80% have kind of said moderate to significant impact as they look at 2021 and beyond. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, what can we anticipate? And I guess this is where we get to have a little bit of fun, and we get to play maybe economist, and Charlie can then clean up everything that we say here and give you the real skinny on things. But I think when we look at it right now as the economic relief package, and can Congress come together finally and bring out a second relief package for our business community? There seems to be optimism and progress in moving forward, and this $900 billion package seems to be gaining some momentum. Businesses have been shut to no fault of their own, and there hasn't been a lot of funding there outside of the first CARES Act, and folks will turn to other countries, and the fact that they've done just complete economic shutdowns and lockdowns, and what they forget there is there have been significant funding for each one of those lockdowns that have happened from the government in helping these businesses navigate that. We're in the middle of an extended pause here in Michigan. We just extended another 12 days. We would fully anticipate that we will see that go through the end of the year, and probably at least into the middle part of January. And again, significantly impacting our restaurants, our movie theaters, and a lot of the entertainment venues that Julie referenced. Vaccine development, the slide here on the left, I think, shows it, and you can kind of see there the light blue line at the top is the supply line. So, and the demand kind of crossed somewhere in there just before, in that March-April timeframe. And so you can see the question that we have is the vaccine it will be available here very, very soon. The question becomes will we get vaccinated? And you can kind of see there even at the end of the year, the projection is about a $50 million gap between the supply and the demand on that. So, the quicker that we can do that, and you talk a lot about the herd immunity, and so folks that have had COVID getting vaccinated, getting to that 60 to 65%, the sooner we can do that, the sooner we can really fully reopen our economy and get folks back to back to work. I think Pfizer is fully expecting tomorrow they'll receive the emergency use authorization, and hopefully we begin seeing some of those frontline workers and elderly and most vulnerable population as soon as maybe next week or before the Christmas holiday begin getting vaccinated. The UK began that, as everyone probably heard, earlier this week. But I do know the state will have a pretty aggressive communication strategy and encouraging everybody to get vaccinated when it becomes available for sort of that mass population, which by all expectations and anticipations will be somewhere in that April to July sort of time frame. But again, I put that graph up there to show that, we're going to have the demand there, but will the demand, catch up to the supply, which I think will be critically important. Education and childcare, the question is, at what point do we return to in-person learning? You'll be thinking about our kids are coming up now on 9 months and soon to be 12 months outside of in-person learning. Clearly, it's a workforce development issue, especially as we begin reopening offices and bringing people back in a full-time type of capacity. Will the childcare facilities be there? A number of those in-home childcare, facilities and businesses have closed and shuttered. Will they be able to reopen, and will we have the childcare that will be required for all of us to return to work? The office remote work, you've heard a lot about that as well. What will that look like? I think if all of you were like we were, I remember telling my team back in March, okay, we'll see everybody after spring break, and then it became Memorial Day. Then we measured it by July 4th, and it was Labor Day. And so now where are we now? Is it in the first quarter? Is it in the second quarter? A lot of that hinging on, obviously the vaccine. I think it's clear to say that as employers, we will all have some type of new remote work policies as we go into 2021 and beyond. But the critical nature of us as humans and that interaction and building those relationships, that collaboration, being able to work with our teams, be critically important. So I do see at some point in time, by the mid part of this year, we will begin seeing offices reopen. And I do anticipate the majority of folks having people back. And at the same time, I do think that I know that our organization, as well as everybody, they have found ways to be productive and very efficient remotely. And I think that, again, will require all of us to think a little bit differently about what that looks like. Jobs and economy, those first four things there will have a great and significant impact on our economy as we get into 2021 and 2022. We would fully as well anticipate that we can kind of get to that June, July timeframe in July of 2021. We fully anticipate a very strong second half of 2021, really kind of giving us a great platform into what we think would be a full recovery and strong 2022. So state of the region, something that I talked about a year ago. It's a partnership we have with LEAP and benchmarking our region with 11 other regions across the Midwest and the Southeast part of the US. We were fully prepared to release our report in April of this year, and clearly it was sidetracked a little bit, but Bob and I have met with our investors. We met internally with our teams here in the last few weeks. We are planning to introduce that to the community in January of 21. We do think that this has a strong, possibility of really providing a regional vision for us and where we're going to be heading in the future. So next slide, please. I'm pleased to announce we're in the process of launching what we're calling the Voices of Small Businesses campaign. We talked a little bit about the resiliency, the innovation, and the leadership, and what and how our small businesses have adapted to these challenging times. If any of you are out on Small Business Saturday, I know I spent some time over in Old Town, and I think the 4 or 5 stores we went into, there was a wait outside to get in, and I know a couple of the business owners were apologizing for that, but I thought it was great to see the support we're continuing to get and what and how they've adapted. And so I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a video trailer on the campaign and just some of the voices. We're going to be capturing this and extending this out a little bit more. And I'll let the video play and I'll wrap up.
My name is Lynn Ross of Mother and Earth Baby Boutique in Old Town Lansing.
My name is Scott Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Michigan Grain Distillery.
Hey guys, it's Adrian at Goodfellas Bagel Deli. 11 events is still here.
There's no doubt that the pandemic has been hard on many businesses, certainly on many of our customers, and it's been hard on us in different ways as well.
2020 has been nothing short of challenging for all business leaders and CEOs across the country.
The devastating part has been that no events have been able to take place.
I stopped focusing so much on the numbers, but instead began looking for opportunities in ways in which I could be more of a help to the community.
We also produced outdoor public art, created a series of outdoor masked artist talks, and began popping up safe outdoor art fair shops.
We switched gears 100% into making sanitizer for local fire departments, police departments.
I feel really grateful that we've been able to help people with virtual events that, everything from economic clubs to town halls to international conferences, and in many cases people are growing their communities.
We've actually grown from where we were 3 years ago when we began.
And it has changed the way that we will do business going forward. I am grateful for all that I've learned, and I'm grateful for the community that has supported us through this really tough time. Hi, my name.
So, look for this campaign to be launched. It'll be out via a lot of our e-communications, digital and social platforms after the first of the year. We're very pleased to be able to highlight a lot of those voices. And I was given the Oscar wrap up saying, Tim, enough. And so I'm I'm done. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning, and we'll look forward if there are any questions to answer after we're finished. Thank you.
Tim, thanks on an everyday basis for what you guys do, and thanks for your very, very thorough report. As a result, I'm going to introduce Bob Trezise. He's got 1:30 to do his.
That's fine, Bob. He can do that. I know he can. I have great confidence.
Okay. All right. Next up, obviously, Bob Trezise, President and CEO of LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. Bob, take it away. Leave out the vowels if you could, just to move it along.
I get it. I definitely get the signal, and I will actually be quick. I do want to thank the Michigan Business Network, Chris. Your organization provided critical communication skills and avenues for us this year. Thank you so much. And I want to give a big shout out to my colleagues who have really given very insightful presentations today all around. They are our friends. Our region has never been unified. I've been saying this for several years, but our region has never been more unified in a clear vision and individual organizational goals to get economic development done for our people in our community. And I want to thank all of my great friends there this morning. Tim, I did my damage in Old Town last weekend, that's for sure. And to all the folks who are members of LEAP, you hire LEAP every year to do economic development on behalf of our region. We literally and only exist because of our members. Many of you are members, and I am grateful for that. Our region is much better, and your business is better because of that support. So thank you once again. Just a little story. I know I'm preaching the choir here, but economic development is crucial. It is imperative that we have an excellent economic development system. And just as one fun example, the Pfizer plant in Kalamazoo 3 years ago received a major incentive called the Good Jobs for Michigan from the state of Michigan. And this allowed them to select between two sites in Kalamazoo rather than building their new manufacturing plant in Germany. And guess what? Right now, that vaccine is going to be produced and made in Kalamazoo and exported and not from Germany. So think about the ramifications. These incentives matter, and our state has been quite poor the last 10 years on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, in supporting economic development. So that's just a little story for you. And the next slide, please. Okay, so quickly here, as far as like all of you, we suddenly had another major job to do in addition to our current job. And we had to go from sort of a global marketing and packaging efforts and with working with entrepreneurs to becoming an emergency small business agency. And we had to do it in weeks. It was a massive reorganization, new roles, legal agreements, bureaucracy, everything you can imagine. Anyways, that doesn't matter. What matters is in a matter of months, with multiple programs, we brought $7 million to our region. That's 4 times the size of LEAP's annual budget. We brought $7 million, and we gave basically $10,000 to $20,000 grants to nearly 500 businesses. We did that intentionally and equitably distributed across the entire 3-county area that we represent, Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham County. But we also made sure in our summer months to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. As we all know, underrepresented populations have historically and systemically for centuries been left behind, and it always gets worse during crisis. And we really wanted to work intentionally hard to make sure that didn't work. So we work with 9 diversity, equity, inclusion organizations, along with 70 local economic development partners, an army of people. We couldn't have done it without everyone's partnership, including many here in this meeting today and presenters, to make sure that we got this money out. So our philosophy was emergency, put the fire out. We've got to keep pumping money out. We feel very strongly that we have a strong chance in the very late fall of next year into 2022 to have historic explosive economic growth. But it depends how deep that hole is for everyone to get out of. And if we do not do, both at federal and state levels, both relief and stimulus, major bills in the trillions of dollars, that hole will be very, very deep and will be much more difficult to escape in a timely fashion in the deep fall next year. If we can just bind together, have our finest hour together, be super smart, super tough, and keep helping people for these next 6 to 8 months, we have a real shot. But in addition to all of that, we worked, if you could go to the next slide, please. We did our normal, continued on with our normal work somehow. We had a number of projects. There's a huge Delhi Township construction project underway. I can't tell you what it is, except it's huge and it's international, but weirdly, we're not allowed to announce it yet. But we also worked with the city of Lansing under a contract on the Temple Club. Glanbia, the fifth largest company from Ireland that LEAP brought here up in St. John's, is production is underway. We have been working with the city at the Capital City Market, was a very complex brownfield project, as well as we brought a Chinese technology company here called Continental Ocean Technologies. The new projects that are underway now, we've been working for 18 months with TechSmith, landing their new corporate international headquarters, growing that here. And there's a series of unannounced projects, including an Indian manufacturer that we're going to bring in. But beyond that, we're working with 5 med tech companies, both expansion projects here, but also international recruitment going on. And even beyond that, we have as big a projects and as many of those big projects that we've ever had in my 10 years at LEAP right now. We are, in fact, up to 11:30 last night, we were putting the final touches on a major international package where we're one of 3 finalists across the country. But this is why those incentives and having an economic development agency are so crucial. We've also enjoyed doing projects like the Bridgewater project in Delta Township, but also a very complex Lansing Shuffle and Social Club, and very appreciative for our contract with Mayor Shore, the Lansing EDC, and the partnerships to make that happen. Now, the bad news was we had spent 2 years with Wayfair recruiting Fortune 500 company, and that has completely gone away. 500 jobs. They said that their call center work is working as productively in individual homes as it is in brick and mortar, and they have they're not going to be coming back probably and doing that project. And the same thing with 500 jobs with Morley over in Delta Township. Next slide. Yeah, we did some additional things. We brought the med tech group together, made sure that our hospitals had PPE through our that. We brought 20,000 N95 style masks from China. We've been working on corridor improvement authorities. Next slide. And just the next slide, please. Whoops. Okay, go back. I just want to hit that last slide for a minute. So in our 2021 regional development priorities, as I said, we're busier than ever with our normal work. We anticipate in the winter that we probably will be administering, I hope, one more very significant small business grant program that will take 60 to 90 days to implement. But we also, as I said, are recruiting major international businesses and growing huge projects here locally as well. We could have the biggest year in 2021, even in the next 3 or 4 months, with announcements across the board, across our region. So we're super excited about that. But in addition to that, we also last night at our board meeting announced the creation of a Department of Equitable Economic Development, the DEEP department. I'm not sure, but we might be the only economic development agency in the state, maybe one of the few in the country to actually have a department that is focused on making sure that our underrepresented populations, we're not a social or political agency, we're an economic development agency, but 40% of our population, we need to make sure that they have full, equal access to our economy, and that we're being very intentional in those efforts. So we want to make sure to add that to our programming, our One and All, the ALICE Working Poverty Threshold program. We work with entrepreneurs who fall below that. Has been a marvelous success. We're turning our entire attraction efforts worldwide into a virtual reality system with new software, partnering with companies to make sure that we can continue to present our region and locations in a seamless kind of way, although we can't do visits and people can't visit us. So we have to figure a different way to do that. So if we can just do both short term, the next 6 months, but keep our eye on the ball, make sure that we don't take our eye off that economic development ball in the long run. We do the second disaster that could happen would be to allow a lost year or a lost year and a half to turn into a lost decade. in some respects, that would be the worst disaster of all. So with all of your help and your partnership, we're going to get the job done. We're not on our heels, we're on our toes, and we're going to go after it really hard. And I wish everyone a very happy holiday.
Well, unbelievable work, Bob. Thanks for that update. We appreciate it. And certainly you presented the light at the end of the tunnel, which is really good. I can't believe how you're going to be flourishing here in what's a downturn for a lot of people. But I think we're finding that as well, that there are industries that are hit pretty hard with COVID-19 effect and other industries that are actually flourishing. So now we're going to get a look at the entire Michigan situation from the guy who probably knows the Michigan economy better than anyone on the planet, Dr. Charles Ballard, good friend, economist, MSU Department of Economics. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and Charlie is just not going to be able to present. All right, I'm just kidding, Charlie. You're going to get paid anyway, all right? Please, everybody, welcome Charles Ballard. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm doing all right. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, well, I'm going to double my fee. All right, I'm going to share some slides here, but I will try to be brief because I know our time is precious. Always a pleasure to be in this program with you, Chris, and Bob and Tim and all the others. So a year ago, you know, Michigan's economy had begun to slow. After 6 years of growth, Michigan's economy had begun to slow down some in 2017. And in 2019, it was pretty flat, very little growth. And so a year ago, I was talking about the possibility of a recession. And I talked about what, you know, we're now, this is a year ago, longest economic expansion in American history. We know that economic expansions eventually come to an end. When will it happen? I don't know. And I speculated about what might cause a recession. Of course, we had a recession, and neither I nor anybody else guessed correctly what was going to cause it. So, you know, predictions are hard, even in the best of times. And so here's my favorite quote from Yogi Berra: tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Anyway, here, for instance, is a graph. You may have to move the faces out of the way. Here's monthly employment in Michigan over a 30-year period. Well, in most of this time, you know, if you wanted to predict what's going to happen next month, looking at the last few months would be a pretty good predictor. Here, this is January of 2009, which we used to think was a really horrendous month. But this, of course, is April of 2020. We are in completely uncharted waters in terms of the evolution of the economy. And so predicting where things are going to go is very difficult. And we've heard this morning several people giving predictions about maybe by late next year, maybe by sometime in 2022, maybe not until 2024. I think it depends upon what sector you're in. But the consensus of all of the forecasts that I've heard is that by the end of next year and the first half of 2022, there's a good chance that things will be closer to, quote, normal. Some things will never be the same as they were before. I have a feeling that commercial real estate is permanently affected by this because a lot of businesses have figured out that many of their employees don't have to come into the office nearly as much as they used to. But I think that the macroeconomy by a year and a half from now will look a lot more stable than it has looked in recent months. But I cannot emphasize too much this sentence at the top. We can't do it fully until we get the virus under control. And everybody's looking forward to the vaccine. And now, you know, my parents are in the category where they might get the vaccine in the next month or so. Old folks like me, I'm hoping to get a vaccine by February or March. Now, Chris, of course, is only 36 years old, so he's going to have to wait for a very long time. But my point is, beyond the joke, that yes, the vaccine will help. But maybe you have heard the fire hose metaphor. The vaccine is a fire hose, and it helps to put out the fire. But if the fire is smaller, it'll put out the fire faster. Thus, a 50% effective vaccine with the kind of community spread that we had a month ago is more effective than a 95% vaccine with the kind of massive community spread that we have now. So I'm going to give you an economic development pitch. Wear your mask, practice social distancing, don't have big indoor gatherings. Okay. But I think that when we get back to, quote, kind of normal, a lot of things will be similar to what they were. Michigan for the last 2 years has ranked 32nd among the 50 states in per capita income. Things may be jostled by COVID, but I don't really think that in 2 or 3 years we'll be in the bottom 10 or the top 10. So here's what it was in 2019, and I think that those rankings will probably be fairly similar in 2022 and 2023 to what they were in 2019, because the fundamentals are the same. Also, in terms of the regional distribution of economic activity within Michigan. In 2018 and 2019, all 3 of the counties of the core of our mid-Michigan Lansing metropolitan area were kind of in the second quarter of Michigan's 83 counties. That probably won't change. Here's per capita income last year. Oakland County has been number 1 for decades. I think it'll still be number 1 a couple of years from now. Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham kind of in the second bunch. And then most of the poorer counties are in more isolated rural areas. Luce County up in the UP is the lowest income. And I don't think that those rankings in the long term will change a great deal because of the fundamentals. The biggest fundamental is educational attainment. And I've harped on this at this meeting many a time. We were below the national average last year. We will still be below the national average in educational attainment 2 years from now. One thing that sadly I think is going to take some years to fix, because every previous recession, the poverty rate goes up in a hurry and then comes down slowly. The long-term trend toward increased income inequality is likely to be greatly exacerbated by 2020, and it will take years. Even if we try to do something about it, it will probably take years for that to get back to where we were, that's something that I think we need to assign to a high priority. Bob and others have talked about the need for additional stimulus. Absolutely. Right now, we need another relief package, and it needs to be substantial. However, we made what I think was a huge mistake 3 years ago when we were very close to full employment and passed a huge tax cut. Sooner or later, we're going to have to think about balancing the federal budget. Not now, but look at this. Here's federal debt as a percent of GDP. You can see the Second World War, we borrowed a lot of money, but we bought something. We defeated fascism. Then for a generation, we had a consensus that we should more or less pay our bills. That began to break down in the 70s and 80s. Then there was the brief time when we balanced the budget, 97 to 00. Then here's the Great Recession. And here's what the official forecast was before COVID hit. Well, we're now, by next year, we're going to be in debt as a proportion of GDP more than we've ever had before. That doesn't mean that there's an imminent crisis, but I frankly don't believe that the world credit market's appetite for dollar-denominated debt is infinite. Thus, sooner or later, unless you want to be like Argentina and have a IMF currency crisis every few years, sooner or later, we're going to either have to cut some spending or we're going to have to raise some taxes. That is easy to say economically, but very difficult politically. And Chris, I think I'll turn it back to you. Or maybe not.
I'm coming.
All right.
All right, there we go. All right, thanks, Charlie. Appreciate, as always, your overview of everything and the insights, et cetera. But don't run off. Get your little pitch harmonica going, because we got a tradition to live with. So that kind of concludes all the presentations right now. Again, I want to thank our sponsors who make this thing possible: Dean Transportation, LEAP, Sinair, Shaheen Chevrolet and Cadillac, MSU International Business Center, Broad College of Business, Kettering University, PNC Bank, Fly Lansing, and WLNS TV6. Now, our next virtual event is going to be next Wednesday, the 16th. And we will be having the statewide economic forecast series event, which is simply a compilation of what we have done here today in an abbreviated manner from 6 other economic regions in Michigan. That gives you a chance to compare and to hear what the challenges are, and they are very different in different sectors of the state. So please make sure you register for that free event next week. It's going to be worth your while to join us. I want to thank my team here, because these things, you know, you've done them, are very difficult to put on. Mike Stiebel, Wade Tong, Jeff Mosier and Sarah Mosier. Without their help, I'm just sunk. So finally, thank you for being part of this virtual speaker series event. If you want to go back, watch any of this, it's on our website. Don't forget, you can put your questions in the chat box still. We will get them answered, and we're going to get the questions and the answers out to everyone who attended. And of course, the website is michiganbusinessnetwork.com. You should be on there all the time anyway. Look at me. You should be on there all the time anyway. All right, to keep with the Mid-Michigan Economic Forecast tradition, we're going to end with a song. Straight from the MSU recording studios is Grammy worthy Dr. Charlie Ballard singing Michigan, My Michigan, set to the tune of Old Christmas Tree. Now, we're doing this on the honor system. You are to sing along. And again, it's the honor system. So please sing along with the song. And until next time, thank you all for being here, and have a prosperous holiday season.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. And let's sing. This is the first verse of the best known of Michigan's. Michigan has more than one state song, but this is the best known of them, written in 1902. And it's to the tune of O Christmas Tree, which seems appropriate at this time of year. So I'm going to sing it whether you like it or not. And I suppose I'll leave it to the rest of you on the honor system. A song to thee, fair state of mine, Michigan, my Michigan. But greater song than this is thine, Michigan, my Michigan. The whisper of the forest tree, the thunder of the inland sea, unite in one grand symphony of Michigan, my Michigan. All right.
Thank you all for attending, and as always, from all of us, and thanks to our esteemed panel. We appreciate what you do on a daily basis. Have a prosperous week. Thank you.
Thank you.